Hi Papercrafters, welcome to another Design with Joe video. I'm Joanne Rogers, a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Central Alberta, Canada, and I've been designing with you in mind since 1999. Today's video is an edited version of a live recording. Enjoy! So today is a day where I take a design out of a current Stampin' Up! Catalog and I maybe break it down a little bit so that you can see how it's made so you can make one yourself. And the whole idea here is that you use what you have at home. You don't need to get everything out of the catalog, even though it's really tempting to do that because I like to do it too, but you don't need it. I want to show you a few different designs so that you can get your mind thinking about how you can use some of the stuff you have in your stash. This is our annual catalog, and if you are new to Stampin' Up, this catalog can be a little overwhelming. Now I have tabs on mine, but anywhere you look, there are all kinds of different designs, all kinds of them, and there's something to suit every personality in here. But sometimes we might find a card, like maybe this guy right here, and we look at and we think, well, I really like that card. How do I make it? And so that's what my Case the Cattie videos are all about. So I'm going to take a card, and the card that I'm going to do today is one of the two cards on this page right here. And I'm hoping that you can see that. So one of these two cards is what I'm going to make. And what I do is always the day before, I put up a post showing this picture and I ask you, which one do you think I'm going to make? And so again, it's going to be this one here or this one here. And I never make it exactly as it is in the catalog. And the whole point there is that I want to give you more ideas besides what you can see here and here. So if you make this, if you like this one here with these flowers, I'm going to show it to you with different things so that you can get your mind going about some different ideas too. So I'm going to work with Highland Heather. So my Highland Heather, this is a piece that is 5.5 by 8.5, and I've scored it in half at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to crisp up the edge of that with my bone folder, which is one of our tools that are sort of an essential in any stamper's toolkit. I'm going to set that aside. Then we also need a piece of another piece of Highland Heather, and this one is 2 3/4 by 4 1/2. And this, then a piece of basic white, and our basic white is 3.5 by 4. And then we also have a couple just little pieces. Now in the design that I'm copying, there actually is only one little piece of designer series paper. And I've guesstimated that to be a 1/2 inch by 3. But I'm going to use another piece of basic white that is a 1/2 inch by 3 as well. So what we need to do with this particular card is, and you're going to know exactly which card it is as soon as I show you this, is we are going to emboss it, dry emboss it with one of our 3D embossing folders. And this 3D embossing folder is Ornate Floral. And it is one of my favorites. It's been around, I guess, a couple years now, but it's one of my favorites because it's an all-over pattern. And it's got little flowers that go with a bunch of different things. So this went with a particular stamp set that was called Ornate Garden that is now retired by Stampin' Up! But we are still able to use it, and it's so generic that it goes with all kinds of things, which is, if you've watched or read anything about me, versatility is something that I love. So I love when you can get more than one use out of something. So if we take a stamp set, and you'll see the stamp set that I'm using today, you can get all kinds of occasions and different times of year out of it. So this is what we're going to use, and we're going to take our basic white. And what's great about these all over ones is it doesn't really matter which way it goes in. So I can put it in and not worry about it being straight because it's still going to give me an all over pattern. So now I'm going to run that through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So if you have a die cutting machine at home, this will probably work in it, but just do a double check. If you have a different machine from the Stampin' Cut and Emboss or the Big Shot, which this goes through well, if you have something else, you might need to just check out your shims and your plates, your sandwiches, to make sure that this is going to go through and not be damaged. So I'm going to put that through, and I've done one in advance. So I have this guy here with those little flowers, and you can see just how pretty that pattern is. is my little grid paper pad that goes with my Stamparatus. And you can see that I use this to stamp on. So here I'm going to pull in my mint macaron, which is this color here. And I'm going to show you the designer paper in just a minute from where that comes. Does that make sense, where that comes? So I'm going to use one of our blending brushes, and the blending brushes are fabulous because there's tiny, tiny little hairs here. This is very soft, and it picks up color wonderfully, and it colors over an image. Now, we are going to do a little bit of a almost like a little resist technique. And I save these sort of by color family. So I only have 6 of them. I could have one for every single color, but there really isn't much point to that because they're so easy to clean off. So I keep them by color family. So if I were to take this, I don't remember the last color I probably used for this, and I just rub it on my paper, you can maybe see that there's a very faint little bit of green, and that real faint little bit of green is not going to interfere with what I'm about to do with it. You can wash these under running water, just plain running water, and then let it sit on your desk for a while so that it has a good opportunity to dry. And I have done that, but I find that I don't have to do it every time I use it. I use my hand fairly close to the head of the brush. It is a really flexible brush, so you can see here that it's got lots of movement, but I just like to have my hand here because it gives me just a little bit more control. So that's how I hold the brush, and that works for me. You may find that something else works for you. So I'm going to dab it in here, and I'm not going to go right on top of my paper. When I do that, what I'm going to be left with is probably a splodge. I don't know where that word came from, but probably a bit more color, like a blob. That's what I'm looking for, a blob of color where I don't want it. So what I do is I just tap it off onto my scrap paper, and then I swirl the brush, and I'm not putting very much pressure on it, and I'm just coming across. And I just want to have some color on my flowers. And you can see where the embossed part of the flower is that it's picking up and getting almost a little bit darker there. So I'm going to add a little bit more. I want it a little bit darker than that. And I am just using a very soft motion and always a swirling motion. That's going to give me the most consistent color coverage. And you can see that I'm not going everywhere on the white. I do want some of my white to still be showing. And so if you apply a little bit more pressure, you can get a little bit darker. But I'm sort of happy with that. I've got a little bit darker showing right around the edges of the flowers, and that's okay. Okay, so that's all for that part. So we're going to put away our mint macaron color and our blending brush. And so I can clean this off to show you, just clean it off. And you can see that I got most of the color off onto my piece of paper that's going to go on my card. So we're done with that. And I think we can put that off to the side too. So there is one part of our card. Now what we need to do, so I'm going to pull in the hand penned paper. Now, before I do that though, you probably have figured out what card I'm making by now, right? So out of these 2 cards, there isn't any embossing on this one. So this is the guy that I decided I was going to do for you. Now I didn't want to use, I do have the thanks and hello embossing folders, but I didn't want to use those because you can see the example right there. I wanted to use something different. So what Stampin' Up! Has done here, what the artist has done, is they have, rather than stamped, they have cut images out of some of our designer series paper. And this is out of the Bloom Where You're Planted. Now I didn't want to use that one either, but I thought, what am I going to use? So I looked through all of my papers and I thought, well, which ones can I use to cut out? Now this paper, you might not think is one that you could cut out, but I'm going to show you how. So these are all of the different designs, and on one side is the pattern, more solid pattern with a color. That's what I mean, more solid. And then on the other side are all different flowers, and there's a bunch of different colors in here. So here's the mint macaron that I just used, and here's Highland Heather, and there's also Daffodil Delight, which is what we are going to use. So I pulled in this piece right here. And this is this one right here. This one doesn't do it justice really, but this is a lovely piece with yellows and greens, and almost, this looks very sagey, but there is no sage in there. It's the mint macaron. So I want to show you how you can quickly cut this out, as quick as I can anyway. So I'm going to cut out this piece right here, but I don't want to disturb this piece because I might want to use that for other things. So what I do is I go around, because I want to use as small a piece of paper as I can. And when you're doing this, there are pieces that run one into the other. Don't worry too much about those. Cut close, but still with a little river around. Right now I'm just making my piece of paper smaller. I'm not trying to get around my image, because it's a lot easier when you start with a small piece of paper. So I could use that, you know, I could plop that down on there, but I don't want to. So I am going to use my paper snips, which are really sharp. And that's one of the other things about fussy cutting, is you want really sharp scissors, and you want ones that have a really short shank. You don't want ones that are really long. And so all I'm doing is going around the image, and I am sort of guessing, and I've cut some off where it was touching, and I am just making myself a picture, because I don't have this stamp set. So you don't have to get all of the stamp sets. I usually always get all of the designer paper. And it's a great way for me to get extra use out of, not extra use, get a few more designs out of my stamp room instead of having to buy all of the stamps. So this is how I cut it out. So that, I'm not going to cut everything out for you because I already have one cut out. And so I've done some cutting. Here is that same one all cut out. I also cut out some leaves. This is all from the same piece of paper. You can see here I've got the edge, and that's okay. I don't mind that it's sort of a cut off a little bit. And then I also have this guy cut out. So I've got 3 designs to work with. I don't know that I'm going to put all 3 on my card, but it gives me a little bit of a little more options, because there's no words on here. So on the one in the catalog, there's words on the embossing folder, but there isn't here. So I've taken, let me just find it here. I have taken the Inspired Thoughts stamp set, because I'm going to do a piece directly underneath the designer paper, and I'm going to stamp on it. And this one has lots of opportunities here, and I decided on the thank you so much. So the Inspired Thoughts stamp set is one that I picked up because I've already talked about versatility, but this has thank yous, it has Christmas, it has sympathy, it's got a little bit of everything in here, which makes it one of the stamp sets that I would consider to be a very useful set in your stash. And I'm going to use Highland Heather, and I'm going to use the thank you so much, and I'm just going to put it back onto my grid paper here. And just to help me sort of line up a little bit, I'm going to line up that piece of paper with the lines on my grid pad, and then I'm going to stamp, ink up my stamp, and then I'm going to try and get this straight without getting my head in the camera, which is always a bit of an interesting proposition. So let's just see. Whew, that's not bad actually. Okay, and we are going to put our card together. So you can see that this card actually goes together fairly quickly. Now, if you could stamp images here, and I've got some things, a couple more designs that I want to show you. So don't go anywhere, because you're going to want to see those guys too. So I've already put dimensionals on the back of our paper. And this is something that I probably don't do very often, and it's where we use the same color paper on top of the card. So I'll pull that design in again just to show you really quickly. So it's sort of almost hard to see, but you can see that they have the exact same color of paper in behind there. So I've taken my Highland Heather, and this piece is the one that is 2 3/4 by 4 1/2. And I'm going to place that down so it's centered. Then I'm going to take this piece, and this piece here is going to go directly over top, and it's going to extend beyond the edges of that Highland heather. So I'm going to take some of my liquid glue to do that. I'm not worried too much here, and I want to make sure that I don't put liquid glue all the way to the top and bottom, because there is a little bit showing at the top and bottom. I'm not going to put dimensionals on the edges here. I'm just going to rely on the paper, because there's not all that much sticking out, just to sit there. Okay, so that's our card so far. Now what we want to do is we want to take our designer paper, and it's going to go sort of 2/3 of the way down. And on the card in the catalog, it's working like a little ledge. And I think actually I want that to go a little further down. But the add that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my words right over top. Now you can do this over top a little bit off to the side. You can do it exactly in line. Really, it's up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to take, first of all, I'm going to put my designer series paper down, and I'm going to put that on with liquid glue. And you can use whatever designer paper you want, and that's going to extend to the side just a little bit, hoping that that is straight. And then my words are going to go on, and they are going to overlap. I'm going to overlap just a tiny little bit, but I'm going to have them out to the same amount, I think. Oh, you know what? No, I'm going to do them just a little bit, because we can do whatever we want here. This is our card. I just want to make sure that's straight. Now we're going to put on our flowers. And so our flowers, make sure I don't have two there. Our flowers are going to sit on top and a little bit to the left, and I have to decide which ones I want to go on there. Now that one, he may be fine just by himself. This little one is a little bit smaller, and I might put those in behind. And that's what I think I'm going to do. I think this one maybe is just a little bit too tall. Now I could take this off. Let's try it. And you're going, no, no, don't cut it. Yes, I'm going to take it off. And we're going to design on the fly here and see whether we like it if it's a little bit smaller. Now it can overlap, but we don't want it to go into our words. Well, that is better. So let's see. I think actually I like this one the best. I'm going to go, I think, just with that one too. So on the catalog, there's two of them, but I think I'm just going to go with one. So let's go with one there. And we are going to put that on with our dimensionals. And I want that elevated a little bit. On the cards in the catalog and some of the other designs I have done, they're not elevated. They are just glued straight down. So there's, again, always some opportunity to play a little bit and get it to work for you. Because if just look at your card and see if you like how it looks. And if you don't like how it looks, then change it up. If you love how it looks already, perfect. Slap some glue on it, get it done. Okay, so we are just going to place that off to the side a bit so it is overlapping going off to the left. And then it's straight down. We're going to save those for another project. And then there wasn't a lot of embellishment on here. What there is are the little loose flourish little flowers. And I love that little pop of color. But I think we are just going to put maybe some opal rounds, which will pick up that color really well. So I'm going to pull in my Take Your Pick tool, which is one of the most used tools probably on my desk. And I always keep the pointy end, or the pokey end really, in, and I also keep the putty end in. I've got lots of putty in there right now. I must have turned it. But I'm going to use this to pick up some of these, and I'm just going to place a couple around just to give it a little bit of glitz. There we go. Okay, so there is our card. This is the techniques and the layout of the card, and I want to show you one that's a little bit different. So I went into fall, And here, instead of having an embossed background, I have one of the dies. Let me just pull it in here. This is the stitched greenery die. And how these work, how this works, is that it doesn't cut out the paper in a shape. It actually cuts into the paper with little stitching marks. So I turned it over from where it was cut because I thought that would be able to pick up some of that darker color. So I've got that for my background. It's exactly the same sizes. I use some of the Beauty of the Earth paper here. And the stamp set and the leaves come from the Giving Gifts leaves and the Time of Giving stamp set. Another super versatile set. And this one is for Thanksgiving. And I didn't use the stamps, I used the dies. And let me just pull out the die that I did use. It's one that I used over and over again. This one here will give you 5 different types of leaves. And I really like this little guy right here. So that was the second one that I did for you. And then I also did a third one for Christmas. So this guy here uses the Merry Melody and also the evening, let me pull them out here, the Evening Elegance, the Evergreen Elegance, sorry, and the Merry Melody. So the Merry Melody is an embossing folder with musical notes on it. And then I've taken the Evergreen Elegance and I've stamped these 3 images, but I've cut off this tall and skinny one a little bit so it fit a little bit better. And then I also pulled in a little piece of our Rainbow Glimmer paper and I use the punch that goes along with the Evening Evergreen to Evergreen Elegance. I've got a bunch of evergreen things going on and they're all wrong. And so that is, and I've got some of the holiday rhinestones there. So those are your 3 cards. Let me give you a close-up shot because sometimes it's sort of hard to see. A close-up of the card that we did make, and you can just see how pretty it is and how those opal rounds catch the light just a little bit. Think about what you might like to make and take this design, and I'm issuing you a challenge. I'm issuing everybody a challenge to make a design using this. And I'd love to see what you make with it using whatever embossing folder and whatever stamps or dies you have, whatever paper you have. So please, again, follow me and share this with your friends so that they can see what we're doing and get some inspiration for their own stamping. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.